Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time. Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Hello, Fremont. You are listening to episode 5 of the Fremont Podcast. One thing that each of us has that we can all use to help make our community a little better is our voice. Now, when I say voice, I mean that literally and figuratively. Each of us has a place where we are heard. It starts in our homes, our neighborhoods, our schools, our workplaces, and then even on social media. All of us can influence those who are nearest to some degree, and it is with that space of influence that we can make a difference, that we can make things better. One voice that has made a big difference in our city for over 2 decades now is the voice. That is the Tri-City Voice. Perhaps you've seen it around town in shops or newspaper stands, and maybe you've even taken the time to stop and read it. Bill and Sharon have been pouring themselves into the community for over 20 years by giving us help and direction to see what's going on in our city, by helping us pay attention to the good and beautiful things right around us so that we can find access to those things that make our lives a little better. In today's episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with Bill and Sharon and hearing them share a little of their story. It was really great, and I'm happy to share this conversation with you. Before we do that, though, I wanted to say a quick thank you for all of you who've taken the time to listen to these episodes, and for those who have reached out to me on social media. I love hearing from you, and it's exciting to see this community of people emerge who really love the city. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for all that you do to make this the happiest city in America. Now, here's my conversation with Bill and Sharon from the Tri-City Voice. Well, today I am with Sharon and Bill, and they are, I believe, the founders as well as the executives or whatever else you want to call it of the Tri-City Voice. What is your title, Bill?
My title is publisher, editor-in-chief, and janitor.
I think that's probably the way it is for a lot of small businesses.
Yes.
And Sharon, what is your...
I do design and production mostly, and sales and marketing. Okay.
So you run the Tri-City Voice, and this should be from what I understand, it started in 2002, and so the Tri-City Voice itself is turning 20 this year, but that's not where the Tri-City Voice started. You guys started long before 2002.
We started a couple of years before that.
Okay.
Started in 98.
Okay, so let's go back to how long have you been in Fremont? Like, when did you come to Fremont? And
96.
96. And what brought you here?
We were living on the coast, and Sharon changed careers. She had studied some work in production.
Computer graphics.
Computer graphics. What do they call it at that point?
Computer graphics and multimedia.
Yeah. And we really didn't know much about the business, but she landed a job in Milpitas and was commuting every day over the hill. We call it the hill. So we lived in Aptos, and it was pretty horrendous because we had
it's not like what they teach you in high school.
Yeah, she had an espresso maker
and graduate school.
at home, and she had an espresso maker at work, and she lived on espresso, running back and forth over the hill.
Wow!
Because it was long hours. And trying to figure out what to do.
And I knew nothing about production. I didn't even know what a printer looked like, a press. I kept looking to see where the press was.
How did you land this job?
I spent most of my life in sales.
Okay.
I remember the boss looked at me. I didn't even know what I was applying for. I was having so much fun going to school, and Bill said, "You got to go get a job." And I applied for things like Save the World. I figured nobody'd call me on that. And I got a phone call, and I didn't really know what it was about. It was in Milpitas, and I got there early because I get lost. And the boss came in and we started talking to him, and I showed him my stuff. And I had done a newspaper in Cork. And he looked at it and said, "How long did it take you to do this?" And I said, 2 weeks. He said, "Can you do it again?" And I said, "Yes." While I was going to school, I swore I would never do it again. It was horrible. and then I said finally, like, "Well, what was the job?" It was production manager of the newspaper there, and they wanted to go from black and white to color. And they were still doing cut and paste. It was an old style of doing it. And I was in the computers. But came home, I was so scared, and I said to Bill, "I don't even know what a printer looks like. I don't know what this job is about." We rented a movie on newspapers.
Bill, did you have a job in printing or publishing or anything? No. What were you doing?
I was in financial services at the time.
Okay.
So I worked pretty close to home.
Okay.
And I had clientele, absolutely no thought of going into newspapers or publishing or anything of that nature, and none of my background really lent itself toward that at all.
Wow.
So it was all happenstance. I mean, Sharon got the job, unfortunately had an accident on Highway 17 on the hill.
It was a little before I got that job, though.
Yeah.
But it was a scary road to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've been driving that every day.
Yeah, it was.
And very late at night.
Yeah.
It was not easy. And we decided that we would move to this side of the hill rather than living over there, and I would commute the other way.
Okay.
Because my schedule was much more flexible than hers. So we packed up our cat and our rabbit, and off we went. And I had a client who had apartment complexes all over the area. And the only thing I knew about Fremont at that point was I was in the Lions Club there in Santa Cruz. And I was in charge of handling the deaf community for that Lions Club. And the School for the Deaf for Northern California is here in Fremont. Yeah. That's all I knew about Fremont. Okay. And I also played handball at the time, and there was a handball court over here, which it doesn't exist anymore, but it was there at that time. So my knowledge of the area was very limited. But this person, this family that had these apartment complexes said, "Well, here's where we have apartments," because we had to move pretty quickly. And we drove over, take a look, and we decided Fremont was the spot.
Wow. What year was that?
96.
96. Wow. That's cool.
So we moved over here, and I'm always curious about areas that I live in. And since my job really entailed driving around and seeing people and a lot of different folks in financial services, I had no problem going around the area and just taking a look. But I wasn't into this business at the time. I was just curious about it. So
They said nothing happens in Fremont.
Yeah. The common wisdom, was nothing happens here.
Yeah.
Of course, if you ask any kid anywhere in the world what their town is like, probably 99% of the time they'll tell you nothing happens here.
Right, exactly.
That's the common response.
Yeah.
But we got that from more than just kids here. And so I just found it hard to believe because we came from Aptos, which is a very small area, and there was a lot happening. And I thought, well, gee, this area is much larger, and it's just impossible for nothing to be happening here.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding out what it is. Well, it came to a crux at one point when Sharon's mom was going to come to visit, and I decided, we were going to show her the area. And I had seen something being advertised in the local paper.
Broadway West.
Yeah, it was a play. And I thought, well, we'll take her to that. Well, the problem was that it appeared that one time in the paper, and I kept looking for it again, and it never appeared again. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on, and we ended up going out of the area to take her to dinner theater rather than here, and I felt very badly about that. And it also got me thinking about it and saying, why am I hearing about things in the paper after they happen, and I see all these people having a wonderful time and pictures, and I've missed it? And also, why do I see something once, and maybe it's very small, and then never see it again? So I just had no feel for the area. And
we did something really different. We decided to have a calendar. We were going to tell people about something before it happened.
We're just going to have a calendar.
You're talking about just you as a couple. You decided that you were going to inform people about what was going on before it happened. Wow.
And Sharon had been working on this, what they called it desktop publishing at that point.
Yeah, well, originally they said,
Yeah. But
and my teacher told me after that that's what Apple created to sell computers.
But we didn't really know that much about it, but we thought, we'll print a little newsletter. And it wasn't going to be a newspaper or a magazine or anything of that nature. It was just going to be a little newsletter about what was going on. And I don't know, things got out of control.
Tell you about something that even today, of course, COVID has changed a lot, but to do something before it happens is really tricky. And we started with a magazine, and we had to be a month ahead. And so we had to have people dress up for things. And then we would say pictures after that, like the 4th of July parade.
Right.
And people would say, how did you have the 4th of July parade in? It didn't happen yet, right? They couldn't quite get it. But getting people excited about going to something, we found out there were lots of theater groups, but they would then have to get into costume and pretend before their show started too, because we were so much ahead of schedule on that.
Yeah, we lived in a fairly small apartment at that point. And those were the days when we started with a magazine, but it was a period of transition for media. And fortunately for us, we were starting to learn about computers, and we knew that part of the world a little bit better than the people who had been in the newspaper business and the magazine business for years and years.
Right.
So we were able to make that transition, and of course it allowed two people to do something that ordinarily you'd need
an entire
large staff to do. So we started printing things out and working on this. And I remember
we did literally the sales, the marketing, delivery.
Yeah, we did the whole thing. We did everything.
So you were taking real pictures then before digital.
So you were printing out. How many pages was this initial pamphlet or
magazine?
Magazine
about
that you.
30 pages.
Okay.
Yeah, we have copies of all of them here if you want to see.
Yeah, that's great. And so you were printing these out and handing them out on your own to.
We didn't print. We found a printer.
Okay.
And we had a printer where we'd print the pages out to take a look at it, and I'd lay them out on the floor to look at all the pages, and my cat would walk on all of them. She just decided that I was laying them out for her, and our rabbit would be jumping around on top of them too. So it was really a home business, if there ever was one.
And so you were designing these out of your house. You didn't necessarily have an office or anything.
Oh no, we had no office.
Oh my goodness,
that was our first one.
That is so you were telling me the story earlier that you were printing these out and trying to hand them out for free to people. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you said this is the first one. What's happening? It has a picture of Mission San Jose on the front, and you were saying that it was being misunderstood for being a real estate catalog, and people just didn't want it because they couldn't afford to buy a house.
Yeah. We had a hard time convincing them that it was about Fremont.
We did it all. We pretty much, I wrote the articles, most of them. We had some people who helped us. Mm-hmm. We went out and sold advertising. We sold advertising before we even had the magazine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to sell it for about a month before it was created.
Right. You had to find a way to fund it, I guess.
Yeah. We had to convince people that it was going to exist.
Well, this is awesome. So you started this? So I see a date here on this one, September 1998.
Yes.
So this is the first edition.
That's it.
And so you started in 1998. And how many? And you published it monthly. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how many years did you do this?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah, we published the magazine for 3 years, and then I was approached about a newspaper, and
we wanted to do more often, and you couldn't do that with a magazine either.
Oh yeah.
This is very expensive.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, this is 1998, and you don't even have a lot of the same technology. And this looks great. I mean, this is great paper stock.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got good quality paper. Yeah. The printing looks great. And so I can imagine it was expensive.
So we decided that we would try a newspaper. And first of all, it's less expensive. Second of all, we wanted to expand a little bit more into the political scene and more of the breadth of the community. And the magazine was more arts and entertainment related, and the newspaper we tried to broaden it out to other things. So we ran both of them side by side for a couple of months just to see what would happen.
We worked 18 to 20 hours a day.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
7 days a week.
Were you guys still working your other jobs, or by the time
No,
this
we were
came
doing
around,
this
you were doing this full time? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Well, I was still
He was still doing it.
kind of halfway between, because I was licensed and doing this other work, but I was backing out of it. Mm-hmm. And the newspaper took off. It did well. And we decided, well, okay, it's one thing or the other.
Twice a month with the newspaper to begin with, and then we went weekly.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Wow.
Because you had to.
We started off as twice a month, and then we went every other week, which was a change for us. Okay. And then we were asked if we would go weekly, and I said, sure.
And then we had to get an office.
Did you say sure before you talked to Sharon, or did you?
No, we
sure.
both did that.
Yeah, Sharon and I kind of looked at each other and went, this is sales, right? You say you can do it, you go do it.
Into, right?
So we did.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. I suggest everything. We moved into an office. It was kind of funny because we'd go down the street, and we had to take regular film, and we'd be doing stories, doing ads, and then we'd have to go get the film developed and then run them through a slider, which took forever to do, to see which pictures we were going to use. But as we were going on, we were getting to know people, and we talk about we were going to do the story, and then we'd go back, and then Bill would be doing interviews. He did operations, went into with people doing operations. I got stuck in a room one time with that. But every day it was something different that we were learning about. So we didn't stop to think, we were tired and this is overwhelming and how can we keep doing this? It just kept growing.
Wow.
And then we get to know there's so many cultures here.
Yeah.
So many people from all
Everybody
over the
is
world.
here.
Yeah.
Everybody is here.
Yeah. So yeah, oh man, I have so many questions, but we're not going to go all those places. One quick question. So at what point did you guys decide that you needed to hire a staff or employees, or when did you bring someone on to help?
We had some people that worked a little bit when we were still in our apartment.
Yeah.
And we moved in. We had a friend that had the Willets that on Washington Boulevard, and they had a building there. And the Willets are they're incredibly interesting people, but they said, well, we could have space for free, and it was a long room. It had no heating and air conditioning. It was a kind of incredible
art gallery area. That
and they had an art gallery in there at the time too.
Yeah.
a lot of strange, interesting people in that building.
Yep.
And we moved in there, and we started getting people. That was the hard part, working with other people.
Yeah. We knew that we needed help.
Right.
Because there are things that you like to do, and there are things that you absolutely hate to do.
Right.
And the things that you hate to do, you put it off.
Right. Yeah.
And so we knew that we would need help with that. On the other hand, when you get into business and it's just you, that's one thing. When you start having other people involved, that complicates things tremendously.
Yeah.
So we did bring other people in, and it did complicate everything.
We had to expand our space. And there was this guy that rented a space in the building that we call him the candy man. He was starting a candy thing, and supposedly over in China they were making this candy. But he left, and they said we could open up and go into the other office. We were working, it was midnight, and it was so hot. We were smoldering and working frantically to finish, and they were breaking through the wall. And we had writers in there, and at one point the glass would shattered over, like glass was pouring all over us, so we kept typing away.
Wow.
And working.
Wow.
But air came through that was so unbelievable.
Wow.
And then Bill was doing stories on the police officers, the police department, and the rookies. That was one of my favorites. And he followed these, were there four? Three rookies.
They're still with the department.
They're still with the police department. It was so incredible.
That's great.
And they would come over and he would interview them, and we were writing the stories away. At one point, one of the police officers stopped somebody, and the guy looks at him and he says, "I know you. You're the rookie."
I'll give you one of the books.
Said,
We
you can tell
published
your
it.
friends the rookie pulled you over.
You guys may do this, but you should take some of these articles that you remember standing out over the years and just put them back out there, because I think these are great stories. That's awesome.
It was hysterical with those guys.
Yeah.
I loved those the rookies. They were like if Hollywood were to design.
Well, I have
we
that.
The best
That's
police
published.
force here.
I have that published in a
We
book.
did.
Okay.
We made a book out of it too.
Yeah.
Wow.
But at one point, some homeless guy came. We were on the second floor, and this guy was yelling and screaming and threatening people. And we called the police, and guy comes over. It was one of our rookies, and he was being very stiff and everything, and talking. And then they brought the guy in. He came back a little while later, and he said, "I was with my sergeant. I couldn't say anything. How are you doing?" He's so cute. He's waving at us. And there were drug dealers down the street from us too. So kind of panicked. So it was definitely an interesting environment to work in. But
let me ask you real quick about the. So you guys said that right now Fremont is such a diverse. It's diverse, and it seems to have been diverse 20 years ago as well. So let me ask you, as publishers, as people trying to reach the whole community and not just a particular group within the community, like what? And I didn't even prep you guys with this sort of question, but it's just in my mind. Like, what are some of the things that you have learned, or some of the things that you had to adjust that you found out as you were writing articles, or as you were creating your paper and adjusting for the transition or the changes within the community? Like, what are some of the things that you've learned from that?
One of the things that I think was challenging in the beginning, trying to get stories and trying to find people, and I went through the yellow pages, and I thought churches, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
Right? They were doing things, and I wanted to get them involved. We wanted to do stories for free. And a lot of the churches said they weren't interested. They were at small community places, and they didn't want anything to do with this. And they didn't want anybody to come. I was so shocked. They kept hanging up on me. And then the Fremont Christian, there was a guy there that was, he was new. He was working with kids. And we did a great story on them. They had this incredible program for the kids, and we started getting involved with a lot of the churches and the temples and the other people. But the business associations and the chamber, we
joined all of them.
We joined everything.
We were very active.
Yeah,
we worked all 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 20 years. We haven't had a day off.
But we expanded also. We went from just the Tri-City area, which is how we started, and now we've expanded out, so we're hitting 7 cities. But we we looked around at the area, and the first thing that I look at is the history of the area. And this was a township. This was Washington Township. The three cities were Washington Township. So to me, it made sense. Although they're three separate cities, they did have a common history. And then if you extend that out, you start looking at the area that really extends up through Hayward and some of those areas, and then even over to Sunol and down to Milpitas, and you find out that not only do the cities have common themes and common roots, but actually Alameda County was created, and in the old days, it wasn't a separate county from some of these places. So you have a lot of common history that goes on in the area. And we started with Phil Holmes, who we knew very well, and he was right in there from the very beginning, and we published his material, and we thought, if there's a common thread here, everybody who lives in an area really should have an interest, and most do have an interest in, where am I? What is this? How did it start? You know, what's it like? Why is it the way it is?
Yeah.
And what I feel is that in order to understand where you are, you've got to understand where you came from, and that helps you to know where you're going. And to understand from a social aspect or a political aspect, it all gets down to that same thing of trying to look at the roots. A lot of people were coming here from other areas, but they were very interested in, you know, where do I live? Why do I live here? What are the people like here? And we found that the history was very, very deep here. It was extremely interesting. A lot of people were not that aware of it. Some people were. There were a lot of different communities here. And I thought, okay, how do we tie it all together? You tie it through history. And then you have to give some homage to all the different folks that are here. Whether they're newcomers or they've been here for years and years, you've got to recognize their existence, and you have to tell people, other people, that they're here, and they're real people. They are not just a monolith. Like, you look at some of the communities here, and if you're not part of that community, you might think, oh, they're all the same. These are all, you know, if they're from Pakistan, they're this way. If they're from India, they're this way. If they're from, you know, some other area of Africa, they're this way. That's not really true. You know, It's like saying I'm from the United States, so therefore this is the way I act. If you're from the United States, you know that each state can be different. Each locale can be different. It's the same thing for the other communities in other countries. So we try to expose that to the general population so they understood that all these people are here. They're real people. They come from different backgrounds. And here's what they do, and here's why they do it. And they may look a little different. They may dress a little different, but they're people, just like you are.
Wow.
And that was the idea. The idea was to bring our community together, to feel as a cohesive unit. And I have to say that through all the problems that we've had nationally and internationally and even regionally, this area has been relatively calm. And I think it's because people do understand, they see on a regular basis people that may have different customs than they do. And we've grown accustomed to that.
We've helped them to come together to go to the events, to hear their stories, and to fight their battles with them.
Wow.
We fought for parks, we fought for religious continuity, and we tell their stories and help them to tell their stories and to celebrate who they are. So they're not afraid of each other anymore. They've come together a lot.
Wow. Well, you guys have been thinking about this for years, and I can tell. Like I'm so glad that I have this on record. This is really great because it sounds to me like when I hear you talking, like everything you're saying resonates so much with what I want to be able to do also with this podcast. And even as we were just discussing just before we went on the air, I look at this and I see what you guys have been doing with the Tri-City Voice, and I didn't even know the story. I didn't know who was behind it. Now I see you and I'm hearing you. And I honestly, I almost view, this conversation and, hopefully maybe a relationship that we can continue to have into the future as a mentorship or a partnership to say, let's continue to do what you just said in the different ways that, that we have available to us. And that's what I want to be able to do with the podcast.
It's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
People want to feel important. Mm-hmm. And they want their stories told, and you can help with that.
Yeah. Well, you guys have been championing that for years now, and you guys are still doing it. Is there as you look forward, even coming out of COVID, or what are some of the things, if you look at the next 3-5 years or whatever, what are some of the things that you're even, I don't want you to tell me your secrets, but like what are some of the things that you're doing now moving forward?
We had to change a lot because of COVID. We were primarily arts and entertainment and activities, and so we changed a lot. And we have a very diverse people that read are involved with the town. We have fifth graders that are reading Bill's editorials and quizzing it.
That's awesome.
And so they're involved, but I think we've started telling a lot of their stories too. Incredible young people, so intelligent,
right.
So talented,
telling
their stories.
I have a neighbor right before I'm hoping to get her on here. I think it'd be okay, but her family's from India, and she has on her own, I think from the time she was 13 or 14, she decided that she wanted to raise money for a particular, I can't even remember, I feel horrible, I'm a horrible neighbor, but she wanted to raise money for a particular a charity that was helping children in certain situations. And so she put this whole event together centered around the holiday that India celebrates, the Holi festival.
Holi, yeah.
And they would hold it out there in Lake Elizabeth Park. And she's been doing that. She's headed that whole thing up for the last 3 or 4 years. And I was just so inspired.
Children with special needs?
I think it is. I'm going to try to have her on here, but I was just so inspired by her story. I think she's 16 years old, and she's been doing this for years, and she had a burden for it, and she wanted to put it all together, and she's just done a phenomenal job. Yeah. And I think you're right. There are so many children in our community right now that are doing amazing things.
Incredible.
Being able to highlight them and give them an opportunity to be seen and heard and everything is really, really great. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that the challenge for this area, and it's been an ongoing challenge from when we first moved here, and that is it has progressed from kind of rural, somewhat suburban, to a suburban, somewhat urban community, and growth, the pressures of growth have compounded some of the issues that we're facing. You have traffic issues, you have environmental issues, you have social issues, have all those things that come with it. And the governmental apparatus, too, has changed and will continue to change. So there'll be challenges there as well.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that the person-to-person contact becomes a little more difficult the more people that they're around. You have less of the small town feel, although it amazingly still does have that.
Yeah.
And of course, there are places like Niles that do have that, where we saw a lot of the community groups before, the districts being very strong. Now that's dissipated to some extent. Whether that's good or bad, I really don't have an opinion as to whether that's good or bad. It just is.
Yeah,
it is
it's
what
happening.
It is.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that. And I believe that through it all, our role is going to be to keep the community thinking of itself as a community, as a group of people that do have a common interest, a common purpose, and that can weather these economic and social storms that are here, and can keep some perspective on the fact that we're all in this together, and not disintegrate into these factions. So I believe that that's our role, and we have never tried to be a divisive type of it bleeds, it leads type of media.
We believe in good news.
Yeah, that's good.
And we
That's
like
great.
to uplift. There's plenty of bad news
There
around.
is.
I mean, you can get up in the morning, and if you want to be depressed, just watch the news.
Yeah.
I don't want to shy away from that. On the other hand, I don't want to give it more than it's due either.
Exactly. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Bill and Sharon, thank you so much for letting me come into your office here. I've loved this conversation. I think that I need to have another conversation with you, because I feel like this is just scratching the surface of so much that we can
keep you
hear
here for years.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll be back, and we can we'll talk about some other things, and I'm sure you have so much more to share. But thank you for joining me in this conversation, and thank you for even just taking the time to share your heart about what's behind what you're doing. And I want to encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you've ever walked by one of those Tri-City Voice stands and just ignored it, after listening to this, I think you need to stop and pick one up and take a look at it, because now you've heard the heart and the vision behind what goes into these papers. And I think it's something that
We also, you can subscribe and we deliver.
Oh,
And
there you go.
$75 for the first year.
Sharon, are you
and
still delivering by
$50
hand?
What?
Are you still delivering by hand like you did in the early
well,
days?
I don't personally, but I can make exceptions.
So I'm sorry, you were telling us how much the subscription was. Go ahead.
It's usually $50 a year after the first year.
Okay.
So it's not
Wow.
very expensive, and we deliver.
Yeah.
And so they don't have to go out and look. We had a lot more stands out before COVID hit. But
Okay.
if they can't find one, they can also call us.
That's
We'll
great.
help them.
Yeah. I know that you can call, and that's unusual these days. Most of the time you have to go through 5 different directories before you actually get to the person that you wanted to talk to. But I called here to set up this interview, and I got Bill.
Yep.
That was
We're
great.
here.
So thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for being on this. And
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing more of what you guys are doing and having you back on here one day
We
in the
look
future.
forward to hearing more about what you're doing too. I think
Thanks.
it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Fremont Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you're so inclined, leave a kind review so that others can find the podcast. To stay connected with us, you can find links to our social media and other content at thefremontpodcast.com. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by Ricky B. Music provided through soundstripe.com. I'm Gary Williams. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.